Well, recent utterances by DA Federal Council Chairperson Helen Zille have set tongues wagging after she pronounced that the ANC and DA are, in fact, in a grand coalition and not the government of national unity. Well, this has led to some questioning the current form of government. The EFF issued a statement earlier saying it feels vindicated by Zille's remarks. The party is amongst the political organizations that are not part of the government of national unity. It said Zille's comments confirmed its suspicions over the GNU negotiations, and in a briefing at the ANC NEC currently taking place out in Boksburg, ANC Secretary General Fikile Mbalula said the party will not entertain Zille's remarks and will instead focus on ensuring that the GNU delivers on its promises. Political analyst Dr. Metji Makgoba joins us now to weigh in on the story. Doctor, great having you with us. A very good afternoon to you. So these latest utterances from the GNU partners, namely the DA and the ANC. Firstly, what do you make of what Helen Zille said in this regard, as well as the response by the ANC, which is almost always shifting towards an we don't need you and you can leave if you want type of stance, whereas the DA is very adamant that should they leave, government will definitely fall?
Definitely. I think Helen Zille has just been provocative. She understands that the ANC is at its weakest and she can now say whatever she said. And as a result, she just confirmed the truth that the GNU, it's not a legal arrangement. It's a marriage of convenience between the DA and the ANC and other small parties, which means that she understands the weaknesses of the ANC, and that's why she's playing all these mind games. But in the end, her comments do not reflect well on Ramaphosa. Now, it appears as if it's Ramaphosa who's in a relationship with the DA, whereas the whole collective of the ANC had agreed that they are going to work with the DA. But factually, she's right. This is just a marriage of convenience which can collapse anytime.
So, Doctor, are these responsible type of utterances, and what could their potential repercussions be, particularly at such a critical time where the country is only starting to get behind the idea of this newly formed government, with some even outwardly hoping and saying that they hope that it actually fails based on the very principles of which we're still not privy to as to how it was founded on?
Definitely. I think we know Helen Zille. Helen Zille is a controversial figure. And given that her responsibility, and she has said this in many public platforms, that the role of the DA is to destroy the ANC. And now she's just ruffling the cage or the feathers by saying all those type of things. And unfortunately, the ANC can't do anything at the moment because they are just reliant on the DA to keep the government moving. Otherwise, she's just showing that the ANC does need the DA, and the DA does not necessarily need the ANC because it's the ANC which is the biggest loser. Unfortunately, in this case, the ANC will just have to hide their head in the sand because they don't have other options.
And let's talk about that. If the ANC were to try and remedy or salvage the situation, Doctor, what route should they be looking at?
The available parties are the MK party and the EFF, and the ANC has made it clear that they do not want to work with those two political parties, and the issues are clear. The DA and the ANC are what we call a neoliberal alliance, but the DA is a distant cousin of the ANC in terms of political ideologies in South Africa, which means that if they were to join forces with the MK and the EFF, the ANC was going to be forced to move to the left. And currently, the ANC is just a conservative party that has nudging to the right. So they are just stuck with the DA. Unfortunately, the DA in the form of Helen Zille is behaving arrogantly.
And Doctor, let's just reflect for a moment and say we understand what is currently going on, but what events would be actually triggered should this GNU actually collapse?
We have seen that in various metropolitan municipalities in which these parties have not been able to work together. I don't think South Africa is culturally ready to have a coalition government. Now the DA in the form of Helen Zille is trying to show us that any time this arrangement can collapse. And I think it's just it's just a balancing act in which all these political parties have decided to work together, have to put the interest of the country forward. But for Helen Zille, that doesn't seem to be the priority. The priority is to provoke the ANC to see who is the boss. And unfortunately, because the ANC does understand that they have constraints and limitations, there's nothing they can do. They just have to see the DA's action. And I think given the precarious relationship between the ANC and the DA, we are likely to see the collapse of this arrangement.
And Doctor, speaking of that provocation, the NEC is currently meeting for 6 days out in Boksburg. How much focus or emphasis should they then put, particularly on this issue, should, of course, there's a situation arises that there might be, in fact, a destabilization of this GNU?
If they are futuristic and plan based on possible scenarios, they should actually have a contingency plan in which if the DA decides to destabilize government by pulling out of this arrangement, they have to come up with plans. Even though they may not want to work with the MK party and the EFF, they will have to make a plan, because if the ANC and the DA have just agreed to have a gentleman's agreement that they are going to work together, it means that is a precarious relationship. And Helen Zille has started dismantling the foundation. And if she has said all these contradictory statements, even putting Ramaphosa in a very bad light, it shows that the ANC should now seriously think about the plan B if these things don't go as planned.
And a very quick one, Doc. How feasible then is this government, particularly at national level, when we are also seeing that it is seemingly trying to rear its head at provincial structures?
I think for ideological reasons, there shouldn't be any problems between the DA and the ANC, because these are two political parties that believe in the markets. They run a neoliberal project in various spaces. So logically, they should be able to work together, because the ANC has since 1994 been moving to the right to where the DA currently is. So the on policy and political issues, I don't see them having serious differences. It's going to be just personality politics in which the DA, in the form of Helen Zille, will just make statements that is going to scare the ANC. And unfortunately, in the form of the ANC, they do not have any remedy or recourse to handle the situation. They just have to be happy with what they have. Whether Helen Zille and her core are misbehaving, the ANC has no other plans.
Doctor, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon and for your input, Dr. Metji Makgoba, the political analyst.